I started my career when I was 15, started doing freelancing very early on. Let's shut this down right now and then move to another company. We did end up growing about 25% month on month. As a head of growth, my job is essentially to ensure that all the levers are working properly. I think just being realistic and transparent with people helps a lot. Um, making things very open will solve half of your challenges. You would have all seen that there's a lot of influencer campaigns that keeps on running, right? You would have seen influencer campaigns from Mama, you would have seen influencer campaigns from Nika. Be very, very patient. Things will always fall in place. Growth is also a journey. Don't consider it as being one milestone to be achieved. Google, Facebook largely contributes to about 50 to 60% of their fresh paid acquisition. For us, fortunately, 90% of our customers comes back within the first year itself. Throughout the year, you will see a lot of deviation happening in markets. So IPL is about to come. There's going to be a lot of change in the marketing play. Marketing is just top of the funnel, or sales is just top of the funnel, right? Ultimately, it's product which wins. That is, so we basically create a 1 year plan that, hey, this is what we're going to execute. I think in some places, you can also create a big time bomb within a small startup as well by executing something wrong way. Given an option, I never want to exit. I think I definitely want to build a company which can sustain. In a fintech startup, giving money is easy, collecting money is difficult. So you have to keep collecting money from your customers. Really, I think you have largely covered everything that I've done all throughout my life. I think one thing that I can possibly say is I started my career when I was 15, started doing freelancing very early on. I think that was a big, big lead to my in general career as well, because when I actually started hitting the floor to start working, I was already 6 year experience. So for 15 years of age to 21, I was freelancing and then still working across the globe with multiple clients on building their web and mobile application. So I think I'll just take the journey slightly back in terms of why I had to move from my last company. So Instacar was largely into airport taxi experiences. One of the bigger problems that you might face if you are in Bangalore is taxi is not very easily available, or even if taxi is available, they're not in the best shape. Usually dirty and couple of other issues, right? But let's say when you're going to airport specifically, most of the airport transits happens, especially in tier 1 cities like Bangalore, Bombay, and Delhi, is because people are traveling for work. So, and if the taxi doesn't show up, you're not just going to lose a 5,000 rupees ka flight. You also may have connected meetings that you also might end up losing. A lot of times, sales folks are traveling to close a deal, which may range anywhere from $100,000 to maybe a multi-million-dollar deals as well, right? So we were essentially focusing on ensuring that the taxi shows up on time, and if taxi doesn't show up on time, we pay for your next flight ticket and ensure that you board the next flight ticket immediately. But COVID happened and then we had to shut down. The problem was within travel, the space was largely closed. We have recently started touching back the pre-COVID numbers. So it took almost 3 years to get back to the numbers where we were doing pre-COVID. So the decision essentially for us was whether to continue and struggle in the travel space or to do something else. We decided to take the other path, which is let's shut this down right now and then move to another company. Fortunately, I joined Nira also because one of our investors also ended up investing in Nira. Me and the founder were already friends. And when I was telling him, hey, I'm trying to move on, he gave me this opportunity of saying that, hey, why don't you come and join us over here and then scale up the business over here at Nira. Because I've already been in touch with him for a long time, it became pretty easy because I was convinced that the founders are on the right track for Nira, and maybe I can have some good trajectory over here as well. When we joined, we were doing early single digit crore numbers in a monthly basis. Now we are closer to 100 CR plus. So in 3 years, the business has largely been somewhere around 20 to 30x in growth. First year was very amazing. We did end up growing about 25% month on month at Nira in terms of the growth perspective. So trajectory is very good. One large motivation for us to show up every day is most of the people who live in India are earning less than 35,000 rupees, and there's no institution who's ready to give them money. Even at their primary reasons being concerns in terms of health issues or something which is pressing, nobody wants to give them money. But we as a entity, we cater to all these people where traditional institutions are not ready to give them money. We are ready to help them out. This is also the larger earning audience in India. So if you go to tier 2, tier 3 cities, these are the primary people who are making living for their family, so we help them cater to their needs as well. So I think pretty tough question. I'm also still trying to answer this till now. But what essentially happens is, as a head of growth, you essentially start from top of the funnel marketing, which is basically creating awareness that we exist. Then you work with product team to ensure that the customers are seamlessly onboarded. In specifically lending, or let's say any operations led business, there are multiple teams where the customer goes through in terms of the touch point. In specifically our case over here at Nira, customer has to install the app, he has to do some journey, then it goes to a credit team, then it goes to operations team, then it goes to a dispersal team, then it goes to a collection team, then the user comes back again in retention, again another dispersal or acquisition or reselling has to happen, and then the process continues. As a head of growth, my job is essentially to ensure that all the levers are working properly, all vertical leads are operating properly. I'm able to coordinate with everyone is aligned with what the vision of the company is or target of the company is. And this also includes, let's say, support functions like finance, HR, to ensure staff is in place, to ensure that finance is operating smoothly. So as a head of growth, you're essentially juggling between odd vertical leads to ensure that the business is flowing through. So I mean, just like our normal life, businesses also have some or the other problem happening every single day. Your targets are not aligned towards just top of the funnel or bottom of the funnel. You have to ensure that every single problem is solved, right? So come to an office thinking that, hey, today there won't be any challenges, but you will encounter something or the other keep happening. And as a head of growth, you have to ensure that those problems are addressed immediately, whether it's in operations vertical or let's say marketing vertical or any other thing which is happening in the system. Your job is to ensure that as soon as the problem is arising, you solve it up. And I think not just in terms of problem arising, you also have to constantly be on top of the whole business to ensure that if there's anything which is deviating, you figure out that there's a problem. So I think every day most of the task or let's say half the task is to ensure that there's no problem, and half the task is to ensure that if there's a problem, it gets solved immediately. Yeah, so I think new markets for expansion is a very different. So let's say in my last company, right, it was operationally very heavy on a location or geography basis as well, right, where we have to ensure that we have physical operations available within a city. um, let's say prioritizing also comes with how easy the execution on that particular geography is, and how big is the business opportunity. So in, let's say, a very tier 3 tier 4 city, operations might be very easy, but business is not that big, right? So you have to prioritize in terms of which geography to go after, which fits on both scales: large business, easy execution. But in case of Nira, which is purely digital, we don't have physical presence across the country, we only have offices in Bangalore. We are largely pan India. So in such businesses, you don't just choose geography, you choose a kind of customer persona. So let's say a person who's earning between 15 to 35,000 rupees, having a fixed monthly income, is a similar customer, let's say, living in Mysore, or a similar customer, let's say, living in Bhopal or Gwalior or any other tier 2 city, right? So you pick up a customer persona and then you start figuring out, okay, how many customers can I figure out which is similar to this profile across the country? So for Nira, we initially did started with Bangalore, but we slowly opened up geographies, which was also to control our overall operational overheads. But then within a year, once we figured out the product market fit, we decided we are going pan India. And since then, we have disbursed, let's say, loans from Jammu and Kashmir to Kanyakumari to Andamans. I mean, you name the pin codes, we have presence available or customers available over there. 20 minutes back. I think people talk a lot about product market fit, right? But nobody talks about channel market fit. Something that might work for one company might not work for another company. And you definitely have some top level understanding in terms of how much money can I spend, right?
Right.
There's, I mean, we are also living in an age where 90% of the businesses are not category challengers or category builders, right? I mean, most of the businesses are something where in the world somebody has already done something similar, or at least 30 to 40% of something that you're trying to execute is already being done, right? So you can take more references from what is already being done. For example, if you talk about e-commerce, you would have all seen that there's a lot of influencer campaigns that keeps on running, right? You would have seen influencer campaigns from Mama, you would have seen influencer campaigns from Nika. So I think some good starting point also comes from them, that hey, if a large company which is successful has done this, it's easier for a smaller D2C brand to do or replicate the same thing as well. In terms of other channels, what also happens is Google and Facebook largely are the leaders in the market. If you take any large company, Google, Facebook largely contributes to about 50 to 60% of their fresh paid acquisition, which becomes easy for any fresh company also to pick it up from there. And from there on, you basically start creating a format that my cost on, let's say, Google or Facebook is X. If I create another channel, uh, will my cost be lesser than this on the other channels, right? I mean, if the cost is same, then you're just talking about diversification, but then the real value of channel creation or figuring out which channel to approach or marketing channel to approach is that, can I get a lower cost over there? So you start putting in numbers that, okay, I'm getting X amount of cost from Facebook. If I start something else, what are gonna be my overheads? What is my cost gonna look like? And is this channel scalable enough, right? I mean, there are a lot of channels that you might find which are very lucrative early on. Like for me to sell loans, I can literally go on road and then start asking people that, hey, do you need money? A big portion of them will start converting, but is it a scalable channel, right? Can I really employ maybe 10,000 or 20,000 of workforce in India? I mean, usually companies have these answers very clearly. Once you figure out that, yeah, there can be a possible opportunity available in a particular marketing channel, then you start executing it. I think it takes a good 3 to 6 months to understand whether a channel will work or not. I mean, every single channel that we have started in Nira or in my past companies, it took us at least 6 months to figure out whether we can run the channel or cannot run the channel. But early thesis used to be that, hey, we have this framework where our expectations are XYZ. If those expectations are not met, we don't unnecessarily experiment on those channels. We all, I mean, as a marketer, right, or as a growth guy, or I think even as a tech guy, I mean, across the board, right? I mean, you keep measuring something or the other every day. Data is basically the backbone of your decisions that you're gonna take, right? So today, if I'm saying that I'm gonna hit the target, that's also based on the data that I have available. And if I'm saying, hey, I'm gonna miss the target, I have to do something else, that's also based on the target. The first thing that we come to the office and then see is, how did I do yesterday? Uh, and then I obviously have more reports coming in at 9 a.m., 1 p.m., 6 p.m., another 9 p.m. in the evening. So I think throughout the day, we keep looking at how are we doing throughout the day. Are we hitting the numbers that we want? Are we not hitting the numbers that we want? What is the kind of funnel that I'm getting? Am I acquiring the right customer? Am I not acquiring the right customer? Is the customer getting stuck somewhere? Is the customer not getting stuck somewhere? All decisions are usually these days driven by data. I mean, as much as you have a gut feeling, your gut feeling also sits on top of the data only. It doesn't feel like, I'll not come out of the blue and then say, hey, I feel like this. I'll look at the data and then I'll maybe able to conclude that, hey, this is what is happening. For me at least and my team, and even within the company, 100% of our decisions are based on data. We don't take random hits on, hey, this is what I feel. There's always a backing that, hey, the data looks like this is where the trend is moving, this is what we are expecting is going to happen in next 1 week or next 4 weeks. So for us, fortunately, 90% of our customers comes back within the first year itself. So we know that the customers will come up back to us. Finance is also a sector where trust is built over the period of time. You would have seen that your bank accounts have been in use for a long time, right? You don't change your bank accounts on a regular basis. Similar thing happens in the lending space as well. You don't change the place where you take money from on frequent basis. So customers do sustain. In terms of the balance that we target, what we usually do is we create a 1 year plan that, hey, this is what is my next 1 year is gonna look like, right? And then we do a calculation that these many customers I have acquired in past, but my targets are XYZ. So what we ensure is, because I've acquired X number of customers in past, we will do a calculation that how many of them will come each month. So my baseline becomes, this is my repeat gonna look like. Now I have a target which is, let's say repeat multiply by 2 or repeat multiply by 2.5, then I have to acquire additional 50% or 30% or whatever my target for that month looks like, and then we go out and then acquire. So what we also do is we also create a channel mix in terms of saying that, hey, these many customers I'm going to acquire from Google, these many customers I'm going to acquire from Facebook, these many customers I'm going to acquire from all the third party marketing, these are the ones that we are going to do from partnership, and these many we are expecting from organic to come in a particular month. We create that calculation and then go and execute the marketing strategies for those individual channels. And this is how we come to a mix of how much is going to be repeat and how much is going to be from different channels. So any single channel that we run through, we don't run without expecting that my 24 to 36 months ka growth can come from those channels. We don't run channels which are 1 month or 3 month kind of situation. Let's say even throughout the year, you will see a lot of deviation happening in market. So IPL is about to come. There's going to be a lot of change in the marketing play. There's also a festive season in India that runs every year. Our marketing is very independent of all these deviations. The focus is, I have, let's say, a 15% month on month growth objective. I will ensure that all my channels are capable enough of hitting them during IPL season, during festive season, during election seasons. I think sales and marketing is something that I'm overlooking any which way directly, that comes under growth, in at least in our context over here at Nira, and even at my previous stints as well. In terms of product definitely plays a big role, right? So marketing is just top of the funnel, or sales is just top of the funnel, right? Ultimately it's product which wins. That is why we always talk about product market fit and not marketing market fit. So if the product is not in shape, we can't achieve anything. There's always a day-to-day discussion happening with product and tech folks to ensure that product is in the right direction, right shape, and also evolving for better user experience on day-to-day basis. So the interaction levels are pretty high. The teams that we have over here at Nira are pretty tight. I mean, we also just sit besides each other, so discussions are also very quick, and we all are usually always on the same page. So I think that is what I said, right? So we basically create a 1 year plan that, hey, this is what we're going to execute. This is where we want to be 12 months down the line. Now, what we also do is, because we've been in the market for a long time, I mean, all of us over here in the business are also pretty seasoned. The basic expectations are already laid down. So let's say IPL is coming, IPL is going to be followed by elections is going to be, after a break, is going to be followed by, let's say, festive season. We also run a lot of digital partnerships which are routed through, let's say, China, where China has holidays twice in a year, significantly large holidays like 10 to 15 days. We also understand there's going to be holidays in India as well. We mark everything down that, hey, these are the deviations which are expected. And let's say if in a given month there are 30 days and I only have 20 days operational, in terms of saying that there's going to be holidays, there's going to be Sundays and other stuff combined, then we decide that, okay, let's break the target down to 20 days to ensure, and then let's also ensure that in the remaining 10 days, what can we achieve, right? So we divide the target on day-to-day basis to ensure that we are always on track. And whenever we see a deviation happening, we try to do a root cause analysis immediately to ensure that the plan is not deviating. If something is being pulled down, we try to pump in somewhere else. So let's say if my business is stuck because my organic is not growing, I will create a parallel project to ensure that my organic gets back in track. But in the meanwhile, I will try to fill it from some other channel as well. Because the goal is to definitely hit the target that we have set for, let's say, a particular quarter or a month or an year. So we can't expect a loss in a particular day or a particular month. We always ensure that we are always on track. And because the systems are largely distributed, things are under our control. So anything that goes on toss cannot be more than 20%. And all the things that we run have flexibility to go up and down by 20% each. So things can fill in. So like I said, for each customer that we acquire, right, there's a certain budget that we decide on with the finance team, with the founders, right? Because with each customer, if there's a cost associated, that directly translates to this is the total spend I can do in a particular month to ensure that my growth targets are achieved. I'll give you a simple example. Let's say if my cost per customer is 500 rupees and I have to acquire, let's say, 100 users in a month, my total marketing budget can be only 50,000 rupees, right? So we use this formula to calculate the growth budgets or marketing budgets. And if the budgets fits in with finance, then we go ahead and execute. If it doesn't fit with finance, then we basically get into a debate that, hey, what can we afford, what we cannot afford, what can we do better to ensure that we still hit the growth targets without compromising our P&L. I think scale also comes from, I mean, two things. One is that what do you want, and how is the unit economics looking like, right? I mean, I can't keep spending money when I'm not making money. So over here at Nira, one of the things that we've always kept clear was we need to get to profitability. In some companies, profitability is very early. In some companies, the profitability is late. Over here at Nira, we always had a specific target of acquisition cost where we decided that, hey, this is an acquisition cost that we can afford. Based on those acquisition cost, this is the channel mix that I want, and because of that, this much I can grow. So growth was always a full circle of the whole business altogether, which ensures that everything is also in place and I'm not deviating out of the system saying that, hey, for growth I'm going to break 15 other things. We ensure that things are growing systematically for all verticals, and also ensuring that our balance sheet of P&L is becoming better and better on month basis. So growth is largely an outcome of how my profits are going to look like, and then to ensure that profits are in a certain range, we back calculate that, hey, this is a growth that I can afford. Good question. uh, so I think profitability is definitely usually on line number one, um, unless there's a specific month where we are trying to grow unnecessarily. So let's say, because IPL is coming and I'm highlighting it again and again, during IPL season, the marketing cost usually goes up because there are a lot of advertisers who only advertise during IPL season. So if the cost is very high, my profitability comes down. Let's say cost of marketing is very high, my profitability comes down. Um, so a clear objective is, if I'm acquiring these users, is it worth it? Can I acquire these users post IPL also or pre IPL also? If the answer is yes, then I'm only tweaking that. Instead of growing in the month of April or May, I'm either pushing it post or pre IPL. We take all these decisions based on how my economics are going to look like, right? User experience, we usually never try to compromise. The goal is that user experience should remain the same. Growth should never, and by the way, I mean, it also creates a negative loop, because if you create a negative customer experience, your organic would be hampered. If your organic is hampered, then your marketing budget goes up, your profitability goes down. We never try to touch user experience. User experience has to improve irrespective of anything. It's usually a trade-off between growth and PNL, where usually PNL wins or profitability wins. Growth never wins in those situations. I think more established companies usually have more experience, more seasoned people who have seen a larger picture already, right? So let's say if you talk about an HDFC bank, they already know how to deal with RBI, they already know how to deal with compliance, they already know how small startups comes and goes. So their experience on those matters are much higher. Teams are very redundant. Like you will never see something shutting down completely because of some random reason in a large bank, right? Um, versus in startups, you keep facing small problems, which also starts looking very big, right? So, I mean, everything differs when the company is very seasoned, the staff is very seasoned, the people executing are very seasoned, the trust in the market is very high. Versus for a startup, they keep struggling for all these things till the point they become massively big. So execution style is also very different. Let's say a lot of sign-offs are needed when you're trying to execute in a large company, where say is in a small startup, I mean, you can get started with something very quickly. That also results in quick failures as well, which usually doesn't happen in large organizations. So I think execution style, culture style, stability, sustainability, all those things are very different from a large enterprise versus a startup. I think pros and cons are very
Yeah.
critical, because I think in some places you can also create a big time bomb within a small startup as well by executing something wrong way, right? Because sometimes people will come in, they will think, hey, I'll just execute this, let's see what happens. That let's see what happens can also convert into a suicide mission, versus in large companies it doesn't happen. So there's definitely a lot of pros and cons. Like for a startup, right, you are usually one or two levels away from a founder, versus in a bank, even the top hierarchy has at least 3 to 4 levels of gap, right? Or sometimes even more, right? I mean, how many country heads are reporting directly to the board? Very less in a large bank, right? Versus in a startup environment, you are usually one or two hierarchy below the founder. So your decisions are definitely very quick because you're sitting with the board every day. But that also comes at a cost. I mean, sometimes it results into a positive outcome, sometimes in a negative outcome. I think both have their own ups and downs in terms
Yeah.
of execution. Some people prefer working for large companies. Some people prefer working for small companies or startups. I think it's a DNA that an individual holds, and then they decide where to go for. It has been a common play across the board. Uh, People are common. I mean, it's always a people business. So whether it was a tech startup, whether it was a mobility startup or a fintech startup, you always deal with people. So I think tech and people have largely remained the same. Um, I think operational styles are also usually similar. I mean, at one place you're trying to execute um, mobile app projects or web app projects. In other cases, you are also trying to deliver taxis. Over here, also at the end of the day, I'm still trying to sell a loan and deliver a loan to a customer. So a lot of operational styles largely remain the same. I think the business DNAs are very different. Let's say in a tech consulting business, you are working for a client who has a clear brief available and you just have to execute it. In a transportation startup, you are actually dealing with real world situation. If there's rains in Bangalore, your taxis can be delayed, and that can create a lot of trouble. And this happens very frequently. It happens in Bombay as well. Um, so you deal with a lot of real time, real life situations. In a fintech startup, giving money is easy, collecting money is difficult. So you have to keep collecting money from your customers. The structures are very different because you're sitting on real risk, right? So lending businesses are usually a risk business where I'm giving money in the hope that people will return it back. Not actually in the hope, but at least ensuring that, hey, I've done my due diligence that people will return it back. But there will always be challenges for people as well to return the money back, right? I think, I mean, given an option, I never want to exit. I think I definitely want to build a company which can sustain for as long as possible. So I think exit options can all, in a good situation, can be IPO. In a very good situation actually, but I mean, and we have seen very less IPOs happening in startups in India right now. So IPO is a good option, but I think if you're, let's say, building a deep tech business, acquisition is easy. We've seen a lot of acquisition happening. There's a lot of mergers available. Smaller companies end up selling to a large companies end up selling to a strategic buyer. I think those kind of options are always available. It also depends on what the vision of the founder is. Some founders are shorter vision in terms of saying that, hey, I want to spin off the companies every 5 years. I will end up selling. You will see a lot of founders who are doing those kind of activities as well. You will see a lot of founders who are more long term, who are in the game to build a large business. So I think very clearly depends on what the founder want. I think exit opportunity in terms of how to make more massive money will only come when the company is really amazing. Irrespective of what the founder wants, I think it's what the market wants to pay is gonna dictate the whole situation. But I think early on, 2 3 things that founders can possibly think of is ensuring that they have a decent connections available within the market and within their space as well, rather than taking others as a competition. Maybe start building more healthy relationship with the competitors, because you never know, somebody might end up raising a lot of money and there might be an opportunity available to sell it to them. That can be a good option. Second is, I mean, ensuring that your profits and revenues keep on growing. that gives definitely a lot of leverage in terms of ensuring that even if there's no buyer, you still have a lot of cash flow coming in that will keep you motivated within the organization. I mean, these two can be larger ones um, that I can possibly think of. So I think most founders usually have a niche, right? So I was very good at business. I mean, at least that's what I think. I'm not sure if I'm good at business or not in reality, but I think usually there are two, three kind of founders in the market. Somebody who's very tech focused, somebody who's very business focused, somebody who's very people focused, right? Um, Tech focused or product focused, I mean, they have a clear path that they become even better product managers or tech managers. Suppose they join, let's say if their startup shuts down or they end up selling, they join a company, they become better because they have a lot of business context available, right? When you're running an organization, you you basically have to hire people, um, you have to do a lot of stuff in terms of ensuring finances are in place, product market fit is in place, company is growing, you deal with a lot of problems that you don't deal with on regular basis, makes you a more rounded person in general. So most founders who end up closing down or shutting down or selling their companies, when they join another company, they just come out as a better leader in general because they have more ringside views available on the challenges that they face on regular basis, and then they have more context also available. So a small problem or even a large problem that you're seeing in a company, if you're a founder, you know that yeah, things happens like this. I mean, you're not very pressing versus let's say somebody who's not been a founder will think that hey, why is this company not trying to solve this problem, why are the founders or let's say leaders not trying to solve this problem? Versus as a founder, you have a clear understanding that hey, uh, we know that problems will exist and we have to deal with problems and then maybe execute in parallel to those problems as well. Most founders, I mean, also figure out their niche when they're doing a startup. Most of them usually make a good career in the niche that they have expertise in. I was, because passionate about business all this while, it became very easy for me to take up a role which is more business focused, which is more growth focused.
Aligned to your growth.
Yeah, aligned to the growth. I can take up a lot of business decisions very easily. That's what I've been doing for last 10 to 15 years. So I think the role was very aligned, right? Same thing happens for tech founders as well. They can end up joining a tech role. They'll be more rounded in terms of taking those decisions, taking more realistic decisions. So I think it's an easy entry. I mean, once you're a founder, I think you have a lot more context. It just becomes easy in life to deal as a job, because let's say compared to a job, I'm still looking at a business which is where I don't have to deal with a lot of things that I was supposed to deal when I was running a startup, right? I mean, I don't have to do a lot of small tasks. There's somebody else who's taking care of it. It's somebody else KPI. It's not my KPI. I just have to coordinate with them. So jobs are comparatively easier than being a founder. So I think one thing that we've realized is people like simplicity. They don't like a lot of complex structures, right? So we ensure that everything that we are doing is very simple and easy to understand for the user. If that happens, the user experience goes through. If things that we have built are very complicated, the user experience is broken. Sometimes we also need a lot of information, because in fintech, compliance also plays a very big role. You also need a lot of information and you have to get that information out of the customer. But the goal that we, or let's say the approach that we always choose is, can we make it easier for user to submit those information um, versus making it difficult, right? And I think there can be multiple ways to approach this. What we usually do is we talk to hundreds and thousands of customers whenever we are trying to change the workflows or whenever we are trying to change the screens. We see what is performing better, what users are saying, and then take decision based on that. So I think we constantly keep talking to customers, right? I mean, across the board, between tech, product, and growth, we keep talking to customers all the time, and then we take the feedback also very seriously. Whatever the customer says, if there's a pressing problem, we try to address it immediately. So customer feedback definitely is one of the bigger verticals that we have established over here at Nira, where everybody has to do certain number of calls with customers on weekly basis to ensure that we have the pulse of the market for our app.
Got that.
Strategic pivot. Yeah. So I think my in my last company, and I think over here at Nira also, I mean, product market fit definitely is a journey, right? I mean, most companies or most early stage founders don't get to the right product on short one, right? So when we started Instacar, we started with an expectation that outstation was a big problem. Let's say for me to hire a taxi from, let's say, Bangalore to Mysore is still a challenge. I don't have a single button where I can book and then the taxi guy will show up. That was a big challenge. And I was facing that problem for a long time already. So I thought maybe, hey, this is the right proposition. The challenge with that particular proposition that we faced almost for 3 years was people need the taxi, they need a good taxi, they're ready to pay, but then the customers are not repeat. What happens is you might take 2 or 3 vacations in an year, and if the frequency is once in 4 months or once in 6 months, you don't remember the brand. You usually start looking up again. So every time I was acquiring a customer, it was not retaining. Even to acquire the same customer, I basically you had to spend more money. What we were trying was we needed more repeat business and something which is much more frequent also, versus let's say saying that something which is going to be less frequent. We experimented with a lot of strategies, lot of products, lot of iterations within the taxi space, and then one fine evening we thought, hey, maybe, I mean, airport is a big problem. Let's see how many people want to take up the airport rides. And then we started with this whole thing of 999 rupees, guaranteed taxi. If the taxi doesn't show up, we pay for your next flight ticket. We said we only want to sell a bunch of 10 rides each. We are not gonna sell one ride. And then we thought, okay, let's see, let's roll out, let's see what happens. I think on day one, we ended up selling more than 500 rides in just couple of hours. And we realized, hey, this is a big problem. I mean, this was the thing that we were looking after. And then what also happens is, let's say if you're going from Bangalore to Bombay, you need a taxi to go to Bangalore airport. You also need another taxi on Bombay airport. And if you're going, you're definitely coming back as well. Most people usually are living in a particular city, right? So if you're coming back, then you need another taxi to get to Bombay airport, and then from Bangalore airport to your home. So one transaction is 4 rides, right? Which is creating the whole frequency that I wanted. Most people are also business travelers. So let's say in a situation like Bangalore airport, where most people are business travelers, they're usually traveling once a week. So every week I'm doing 4 rides per person, and 4 times in a month they are traveling. So I'm essentially doing 16 rides per person per month. Each ticket size, if it's 1000 rupees, I'm doing 16,000 of revenue per customer. This really changed our game. Um, from not having frequency at all to basically having a 16 time frequency per month was a big change for us at Nira, and things started flying massively. Like our spends on advertising was next to zero. Everything was just working on word of mouth because people needed those trustable taxis. We were just there in front of them. So I think blockchain and AI may be slightly overrated right now because we are not ready for it. But I think ML is something which is really picking up right now. So, I mean, can I talk about ML more?
Yeah, yeah, right.
So I think what is happening is, especially in the fintech space or in lending space, you want to disburse the So let's say if somebody needs money, the goal is, can I give the money to them instantly? Now, how can you give somebody money instantly? Because a person has to go through a full profile check and also ensure that your risks are covered. With machine learning models, you create models which are more of your idealistic customers or customers which are being approved manually, and you keep feeding them in the system. System keeps updating itself and then starts creating a model where it can automatically approve a customer. Um, ML has been on the forefront of all these auto approvals, and you would see a lot of companies who are saying, get money in 5 minutes, get money in 15 minutes, get money in half an hour. This has completely revolutionized already because banks have traditionally taken 7 days to disburse a loan. Fintechs are doing it in 5 minutes, 15 minutes, and 1 hour, which could have never been possible without machine learning. Um, so I mean, technology is definitely changing the whole landscape, and it's only improving, right? Right now, we are. I mean, if you see the space where fintechs are right now, they're just scratching the surface. The whole country is still left and untouched right now. Most of the customers will come in the fintech play. Let's say if I need a loan, I don't want to go to a bank. I don't have time also, and I don't want to waste the time also. Fintechs are changing that landscape that you don't have to go to the bank. You can just apply online, get the money online. And this is happening across the product. You would have seen personal loan being the on the forefront. BNPL has been a large category. Home loans are slightly evolving right now. Car loans are already on the play. So there are a lot of products which are coming in which are in the fintech place already. ML will lead the whole approval systems, or as a centralized systems which will decide, hey, this customer is ready to give the loan to. RBI is the dawn in our industry. RBI decides what to do, what not to do. I think, let's say, if you talk about the biggest challenges, maybe RBI is the one which is the bigger challenge, because I mean, what is also happening is fintech is fairly new industry, right? Rules have not been laid out till now, and then there has been a lot of gray areas even till date, right? Where a clear conclusion has not been coming that this is how fintechs will operate. Obviously, fintech companies or finance companies or technology companies are also innovating on day basis, where RBI is trying to catch up. So you would have seen last 1 to 2 years have been massive changes in the regulatory framework, in the way fintechs have been operating, and then RBI is on top of it to keep creating new guidelines to ensure that the end customer is secured, right? I mean, that is what is the primary objective of RBI. I think till the point the whole rules are not being laid out, there will always be challenges that might come from RBI that will keep disrupting businesses. Paytm has been on the larger way of what has happened. And you can always say that there are two sides of the story, right? One is Paytm not being compliant, and another is RBI being aggressive on them. We don't know who's right, who's wrong. RBI is definitely trying to do something right. I mean, the intention of RBI is not to kill companies, but then their intention is also to ensure that customer is safe. And with that, it also comes at a cost, because fintech companies usually operate at scale, and in scale they might end up compromising something or the other. But in the case of money, uh, you need tight regulations. I think top of the funnel and bottom of the funnel is definitely the top two metrics: how many customers I'm acquiring today, how many users I'm acquiring today, and how many of them are converting into customers are two prime metric that we have. Our targets are always set on how many customers did we acquire in a particular month, but in between those also how many approvals I'm doing, how many customers are moving forward. These are also two metric that we keep looking at to ensure that we are on track for a month. I think good question. What has been my most valuable lessons? Very difficult to answer because I've learned a lot of stuff over the period of time. But I think the most valuable is it's always people business. I think as a founder, you have to be good with people. In general, having a very high empathy, and also ensuring that the team that you're working with is highly capable on execution. This also gives you a lot of leverage in your personal life as well, because once you start dealing with a lot of people, in general, your personal life can also improve a lot. In general, your house can also improve a lot in terms of dealing with everyone over there. So I think one of the valuable lessons that I've got is ensure that you're always good with people. In fintech, so I think fintech also has a lot of verticals. One thing which is very, very, very essential is to be good with numbers.
Right.
Finance is not a new business where people tell stories. Finance is an age-old business. You always only talk about numbers, right? There's something or the other always getting measured. So if somebody is looking to start a career in fintech, I mean, the expectation is they should be decently good enough with numbers. That's a
Right.
primary requirement. Um, Yeah, so for most fintechs, you need partners, right? Like we have partnered up with Muthoot, IFL, and couple of other large players in the market right now. Partnerships are critical. You can't build. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's very tough to build the business without partnerships. The best way to, for specifically founders in the fintech spaces, um, so I think we have always debated that hey, maybe some founders can. Some businesses can be done with any skill set. Some businesses needs a specialization. Fintech has been one of those places where if you have a specialization, it just becomes easy. Let's say founders over here at Nira had a good long career in debt and lending for a long time. It became easier for them because them and the fintechs or the larger NBFCs or banks that we are talking with, they speak the same language, right? They speak the same numbers, they speak the same language. It just becomes easy for them to form the partnership. Um, Even if, let's say, you're starting a career in, or let's say trying to found a company in fintech space, it's good to at least work 6 months or 1 year maybe, or just try to do a ground understanding of how finance works, right? Because fundamentally finance is same from ages now. I think it's good to have those skills at how a financial institution operate, and then try speaking the same language that any finance person speaks. It just makes it easy for the partnership to go through. So I think securing funding is, I mean, at least in the lending space, has been tough for last couple of years, especially post COVID. But I think in general, what happens is, at least for the venture capital, what they're looking forward is something which can become massive, and where they can also make massive money, right? I mean, investors' goal is not to do some charity; they are also in the business of making money. So if your business cannot become massive, there's very less chance that somebody will fund you. But if the business does have a lot of potential of becoming massive, investors do want to run behind you, right? So that is one thing. One key metric that we realized after a long time, I mean, even though we did end up raising money very early on in our first startup, um, but I think one metric that investors do look at is how frequent, especially in the consumer spaces, how frequent the transactions are happening, and are you able to break even on the first or the second transaction itself, right? So if I need 15 transactions to break even, and 15 transactions happens, let's say, over the period of 10 years, it's not a VC kind of business. um, they need more frequency, faster PNL turnaround, um, and then also ensures that the growth can be very hyper versus, let's say, a slow growth trajectory. So if product market fit happens, frequency happens, and you're able to break even quickly on your customers, it's a very VC fundable business. It doesn't matter which industry you are in. Largely in consumer, this thesis works out. Um, so in early stage, I mean, founders are the ones who are hiring right now. So there's no hiring managers which are available. Um, you have to look at what is your skill set and where do you need help. So a tech founder can deprioritize tech hiring on leadership side, but a non-tech founder has to prioritize tech hiring. So I mean, how I look at is what verticals other people can pick up quickly, where I don't have to intervene on a very regular basis. Let's say tech is a very easy skill set to get to. Hire a tech lead if you're a non-tech founder very quickly, so that you're out of the space or the language that you don't speak, right? Um, Operations are also largely easier space to be in, so it's very easy to hire somebody on operations as well. Um, Compliance, finance, I mean, all those things anyway which have to be in place. Those are also easy skill set to hire. Growth is something that I would prefer founders to look at for at least uh, till the point the business has not done 0 to 1 or 1 to 10, or maybe longer than that also. You would see a lot of founders always doing sales or always on top of growth, only because business is something that only founders understand from a very grassroots level. Founders should be very actively involved in business growth as well. So even if you hire a head of growth, even if you hire a head of marketing, founders should constantly look or maybe involved in a day-to-day activities as well. But other verticals can be fairly easily be hired. So I think hire all the vertical leads quickly, and then get to the growth trajectory. So external forces is something that you can't predict, right? Um, let's say COVID was not something that you can plan off, right? Uh, let's say a lot of RBI rules which are coming in the system right now is not something which is under control. You can't fulfill them at all. I mean, we can't create a model where we can avoid those things. I think being in reality is what is needed. So there will always be pitfalls. I think the sooner you realize that a problem has occurred, the better it is for you to take an action against it. Sometimes it means that, hey, I have to spend more money to acquire. Sometimes it means you can't grow in a single month. Sometimes it also means that, hey, something is not working for a time being situation. It might start working in next couple of months. So maybe take a slight deviation over there. The more you're in reality, the better the decisions would be. So I think for And all these are edge cases, right? You might not be able to predict a lot of things that's going to happen in next 1 year, but the sooner you realize that something has happened, the better it is for you to take those decisions. Start join a fintech, and also I mean the roles which are more around founders,
Yeah.
uh, that can give you quick experience versus joining a team which is a silo in a company. I mean, founders usually keep talking about everything that happens throughout the business, right? So
Mhm.
which gives you more exposure even in your early days. So by the way, I think I'll be very honest. I mean, India doesn't have a lot to learn. I mean, as much as India does have a lot to learn, but India is already on the forefront of fintech innovation in general, right? UPI, you would have already seen that India is leading the whole charter globally, right? Finance has also been, or fintech has also been one of those spaces where India, in terms of tech, India is a leader. You wouldn't see a lot of neo banks outside India or the ones who have done massively good. The amount of people available in India is so huge that fintechs in general are booming. But then there's definitely a lot of things. I mean, one thing that we definitely feel that India has not created a massive brand in terms of fintech, right? Even in the traditional play, we all know HDFC, ICICI, or any banks that we can possibly talk of. They have not come up as an outlier bank brand, right? Let's say if you have to choose between the top three banks in India, what is going to be your decision maker? um, which one is near to your house? That largely is a decision maker for most people, because none of the traditional guys were able to establish a big brand. I think what India has to learn is how to create a brand which sustains. A lot of new challenger banks in, let's say, Brazil or UK or US have been successful in establishing those brands, which India has yet to do. Right? I mean, everybody is trying, but then there's no success that we have seen in the market till now. I think, and now that I'm an ex-founder, I mean, it's easier to accept. I mean, there are times when your bank accounts are zero in a startup, uh, and I think those are difficult times. Uh, at least in my last company, I've had that situation twice. Uh, and it's not an easy situation. I mean, sometimes companies shut down as well. We were fortunate that investors ended up backing on the last moment. I mean, those are my larger challenges that I've seen in my last startup. Keep talking to investors, sometimes just being open to them. Hey, my bank account has zero balance right now. I need some money. I mean, also, I think so. I think, yeah, maybe I can give you a better answer. So, I think being transparent and being realistic with your investors and with the team can actually help you in these situations very well. One thing that happened with us at Instacar was we were very transparent with investors. We were telling them, I mean, we were obviously talking to them very frequently, almost on every alternate day basis, in terms of, hey, this is what we are doing, this is what is going wrong, can you connect us with some people who can help us out in figuring things out? So I think because the things were so open, right, the trust was always there, right? Even though at some point I was not able to raise external capital, my existing investors had a very high belief that we will be able to do good, right? That, and then I think also at the same time we were very transparent with the teams as well, that hey, this is what is happening. I mean, shutting down a business is also not easy. um, we had a very smooth transition on shutting down. Everybody was placed very quickly. So I think just being realistic and transparent with people helps a lot. um, I mean, making things very open will solve half of your challenges. I mean, it might backfire early on, but but in the long run it will definitely help. I think one book on this particular topic I can also recommend is, there's a book on Netflix called No Rules Rules. They have openly talked about how transparent they are with the teams, and in the tough times how does it help. I think be ready to deal with a lot of teams at a slow pace. As much as everybody is doing their job, I mean, there's definitely a lot of patience which is needed on this role. um, Sometimes you're gonna crib about, hey, I'm doing everything in marketing but it's not working out. Sometimes you're like, hey, marketing is working out so nicely, why is operations not working? Sometimes something else falls out, sometimes tech is not working. So I mean, also because this role is not just a single sided role, this is role on top of everyone. You will always face roadblocks if you're trying to get into growth. I think one of the early expectations that you should have is be very patient. Things will always fall in place. And that's the larger advice I would give to anyone. And if you're not if you're not having a capability of being patient, growth might not be a career choice. So thanks a lot, yeah. I think good question sets. I mean, uh, I think one takeaway that I have is, I mean, growth is also a journey. I mean, don't consider it as being one milestone to be achieved, because once milestone is achieved, you are basically chasing another one, and then there will be a lot of roadblocks. Um, I think constantly learning on how other companies have done something and learning something from how they have executed, how other people have faced those challenges. I think just learning them and then implementing back in your organization can actually help you a lot in your growth journey in general.